Back here on HQ, man, what a start to UFC's Paramount Plus era in 2026. And we're going to keep things rolling with UFC 325 in Australia. This time, the spotlight is on Alexander Volkanovski. It's his featherweight championship on the line in a rematch against Diego Lopes. Volkanovski making his first defense of that featherweight championship, which he won when he first fought Lopes last year. Number 5 on the UFC's pound-for-pound rankings, Volkanovski is fighting at home in Australia for the first time in 3 years. UFC 325, all going down on Saturday from Sydney. Let's welcome in our very own Brian Campbell for a UFC 325 preview. BC, when we're talking about Volkanovski, what makes him so dangerous, kind of break down his fight style, his skill set for us.
Yeah, we're talking about a technical wizard and one of the most thoughtful fighters in UFC history. And let's not forget, this guy started out as a professional rugby player in Australia, competing in that sport above 200 pounds. One day he stumbled into an MMA gym looking to get into shape, and fast forward a bunch of years and he's among the best 145-pound fighters, if not the best, in the history of this sport. What makes him great? First and foremost, he's a completely well-rounded fighter. He can wrestle you, he can submit you, he could box, he can punch for power. But I think if you're really dialing in on what has allowed him to separate himself from the pack, it's really game planning. He has 3 victories over future Hall of Famer Max Holloway, and each fight was a little bit different stylistically, including their rematch in which he was dropped twice in the first 2 rounds and needed to make the mid-fight adjustments and rally back over the second half. Beyond that, he also just has incredible will. He had a title defense against Brian Ortega in 2021 that saw Volkanovski deep into the type of guillotine choke that would have submitted many, considering Ortega is a grappling specialist. But it's the calm and cool that Volkanovski shows under pressure. And now you add that to the fact that he's in his second title reign at featherweight. He's 37, and he's doing things in the lower weight classes at an advanced stage that few in history have been able to pull off.
Yeah, I want to talk more about that calm, cool, collected sort of composure when the lights are the brightest, right? He's 7-3 in title fights. So tell us more about why that plays such an important factor. 7-1, by the way, at featherweight.
Yeah, no question about it right there. I mean, his run of names he has defeated at featherweight are the stuff of history. I don't know whether you want to put him in the top 10, 15, 20 all-time for fighters. He's accomplished enough to earn that when you have victories over the likes of Chad Mendes, Jose Aldo, 3 times over Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez. The list can certainly go on and on. But Volk is a thinking man's fighter. When you mix that with the footwork he had, which I really think he was part of a group of fighters at City Kickboxing out of New Zealand who really took the sport to another level over the last decade. Volkanovski's footwork, his ability to make mid-fight adjustments, you add that with that calm and cool nature, and even when you think you have Volkanovski in bad trouble or in bad situations, he's always seemingly one step ahead of you. That was the big thing Diego Lopes said after their fight last April, that for as much success at times that Lopes had, he felt like he was following Volkanovski around, who was essentially playing chess with him while Lopes was playing checkers, if you will. That is the type of mindset that Volkanovski brings, a true thinking man's athlete. But oh, by the way, if he has to get dirty and fight, he can do that too.
BC, you mentioned it. He's 37 years old. Do you have any concern with his durability given his age?
Yeah, that is certainly the only drawback to this portion of Volkanovski's career. Let's be really honest. He's gotten losses in 3 of his last 5 fights, including back-to-back devastating knockouts. The reason, I guess, in some way we don't panic about that is because all 3 losses came against the 2 best fighters in the world. Islam Makhachev, who fought him twice at lightweight, and Ilia Topuria, who ended Volkanovski's first and nearly historic featherweight run with such a brutal knockout, and then soon after moved up to the lightweight division. I'll give Volkanovski this credit. When he fought Lopes in April of last year, who is an aggressive, hard-punching stalker, he bent, but really never broke. Volkanovski was dropped in round 4. He was visibly hurt again in round 5, but he was able to close the show, winning on scorecards of 4 rounds to 1 for 2 judges and 3 rounds to 2 for the 3rd. That showed that Volkanovski still got it. Did he lose against the 2 best fighters in the game? where 2 fights were out of his weight class? Yes, that was a situation where Volkanovski was daring to be great, and we can look back and say maybe he came back a little bit too quickly after that first defeat. At this point in his career, you're always going to question his durability, but he proved in that first fight against Lopes that he can still be smart, still has great head movement and defense, and he bit down just enough to go through there. I think that's why he's basically a betting favorite on the same small odds that he was the first time around for Lopes. You're sort of waiting for that chin to go when legendary fighters reach this age. Can Volkanovski hold on for one more title defense? Well, that's the big, narrative surrounding why we tune in Saturday night.
And say he does hold on for another title defense. What would that do for his legacy?
Well, look, it's already incredible. If you want to call him the greatest featherweight in the history of this sport, like I mentioned with those names on his resume, he may have that case already. I mean, let's be very fair. 3 wins over Max Holloway, 1 win over Jose Aldo, who's largely considered the other one in this debate for the greatest featherweight, the King of Rio. And by the way, Aldo was 32 years old in that fight, and Volkanovski had him out of answers. He was mystifying him with his footwork and striking from so many different angles. The key part here is that Jose Aldo is the all-time leader in title defenses in this division for the UFC with 7. Volkanovski has 5. A victory over Lopes this weekend would make it 6, which would put him even closer. But when Volkanovski was at the very peak of his prime, I considered him at that point a top 10 UFC fighter already. That's where I'm saying, what could this victory do? Just continue to add on to the end of an incredible legacy and maybe move him ever so closely, whether you have him top 10, top 15. The point is, this is one of the greatest fighters we have ever seen, and he ain't done yet. That's the fun part about it.
So I'm gathering that I pretty much know the answer here, BC, but I'm going to ask you anyways. You think he's going to win? Is he going to do it come Saturday?
Oh, it's going to be such a close fight. I'm not so sure. Look, the first fight, a lot of us had doubts. We thought with him coming off the back-to-back knockouts, it was going to be too much. To Volkanovski's credit, he pulled it off. In this rematch, though, I am expecting a much more dangerous and calculated Lopes at age 31. Coming off of that loss, Lopes had an absolute war with John Silva to get the big victory to earn this shot. And what Lopes admitted afterwards was he didn't follow his game plan at all. The lights were a little bit too bright for him in his first title fight. He didn't really manage his 5-round cardio, and he was chasing Volkanovski around looking for that one big knockout punch that eluded him. That's the wrong way to fight Volkanovski, who is always setting traps, always steps ahead of you. At this point, I kind of almost see this as a 50-50 fight. I respect the power and chin that Lopes brings. And when it comes down to making picks like this, I was wrong on Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje on Saturday night, but I do tend to follow the younger, streaking, surging fighter in these type of matchups. Let's see if Volk can do one for the old guys like me and score another big win. Sorry, though, I'm picking against him.
I hate that we have to say 37 for the old guys, but I mean, it is what it is, right, BC? We appreciated a full UFC 325 breakdown for Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. That main event, you see it there, a UFC featherweight title rematch bout. The reigning 2-time featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski against number 2 Diego Lopes. Saturday, January 31st at 9 p.m. Eastern from Sydney, Australia.
A grand stage Saturday for Diego Lopes at UFC 325 in Sydney. In it, a chance at redemption. The challenger set to face off with Alexander Volkanovski for a second time. Featherweight strap again on the line. Our Shakiel Mahjouri sat down with Lopes in the lead-up to Saturday.
There was a lot of online drama when the fight was announced, and I saw you tweet in response to some people, "Stop whining, do the work." Why do you think it is that you got the title shot over, let's say, a Lerone Murphy or a Movsar Evloev?
I think it's easy, no? I still have 2 years and a half in UFC. I have my second chance for the title. I think the people don't understand this. No, I make a lot of sacrifice for this moment. I take a lot of fight short notice. UFC call me in times like, yo, you take this fight, I need you supplement. Okay, I take this fight. But at the same time, this guy try 1 fight in the year, maybe 2. Is a lot for this guy. I don't know what's happened. I understand a lot of guys is so angry, but bro, I only make my job. I accept the fights, no?
If you had to guess, how is this fight going to play out?
This is hard fight for me. I know Volker have a lot of experience. This guy know fight 5 rounds, 5 minutes, you know. But now I am different guy. I'm a different guy. I know who I needed to do for win this fight. I'm so confident in myself, so confident in my team too. I'm surprised that everyone this January 31.
If there's someone who's never seen you fought before, maybe a Paramount Plus subscriber dipping their toes in for the first time, what can they expect from Diego Lopes?
Oh, guys from Paramount, trust me, you watch my fights, it's exciting all time.
And for more, we say hello to CBS Sports UFC analyst Brian Campbell and Shakiel Mahjouri. Fellas, here we are. Diego Lopes had his 5-fight win streak snapped in that loss to Volk at 3-14. We just heard it in his own words, but the Brazilian now looking to build off that knockout win against John Silva. BC, in your eyes, how did Lopes position himself to be a headliner again here at 325?
You know, it wasn't just Lopes bouncing back in that Noche UFC main event in September, like you mentioned, against Silva, which was just a video game fight back and forth. It really is the reputation he holds within this division. Diego Lopes is must-see TV. He brings it every single time. The pressure, the volume, the power, but really ultimately the spirit he brings to the cage. You can certainly make arguments with the top of this division, as you heard Shaq mention in that interview, that there are plenty of top contenders worthy. But one thing about Diego Lopes is he gets better each fight. He grows from the setbacks. He's talked openly about what went wrong at UFC 314 against Alex Volkanovski, and to expect anything less than an even better Lopes in this rematch would be foolish, because at 31 years old, he's evolved perfectly to this point that he's one of the most exciting and most dangerous fighters that this division has to offer.
Diego said it himself there. There's a premium on being an active fighter in the UFC right now. Coming off of 324, we've seen how much Waldo Cortez Acosta's profile has expanded because he's so willing to take fights. It's a busy UFC calendar. We're looking at back-to-back numbered events right now. When Diego is called to fight, he fights, and that goes a long way, not just for building a good relationship with the UFC, but helping you stand apart amongst the fans, right? Like, I remember simpler days in MMA where even guys who weren't the absolute elite had personality. They were memorable. I think of Clay Guida's long wild man hair. I think of Roy Nelson with that robust beer belly just spamming overhand rights like he's playing Tekken. And you see Diego Lopes is really maturing into not just an elite fighter, but one that fans can rally behind and identify. He's all action inside the octagon. He's got the aesthetic now with the long hair and the cowboy hat. And it's only this last 6 months or so around Noche UFC where he started doing these interviews in English. He's fully fluent in Spanish. He's fluent in Portuguese. He is making himself someone that the public can relate to. And after coming off of 324, we saw the numbers, around 5 million people tuning in. And what impression are they left with? An absolute all-time early #1 fight of the year contender between Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett. That's exactly the kind of offense that Diego Lopes brings. When you're reaching all these new fans, fighting translates languages. And yeah, maybe Diego speaks 3 of them, but he can also fight his ass off.
I love it. Just the sort of forward thinking and the willingness to say, I don't make the fights, I take the fights, and when I take to the octagon, you're going to be entertained. We know he has the entertainment value. We know he has the heart. We know he has the chin. But Shaq, what other qualities stand out to you to make him the contender that he is?
The John Silva fight is interesting, right? Because he's going from fighting the champion to fighting the number 10 ranked guy. And John Silva and Alexander Volkanovski have nothing in common other than the lack of head on their hair. John Silva, just an absolute wild man like we saw on Saturday. Alex Volkanovski, maybe the most well-rounded featherweight champ of all time. What did stand out to me, the one thing I was able to take to that fight from the John Silva fight and maybe extrapolate ahead of this rematch is Diego Lopes against John Silva landed 3 takedowns. That is more than he's landed in every other UFC fight combined. And against Alexander Volkanovski, he didn't shoot for a single one. And that's kind of jarring because Diego Lopes, aside from Brian Ortega, might be the single best jiu-jitsu athlete we have at featherweight. He's former flyweight champion Alexa Grasso's BJJ coach. And it's an element of his game that's really vicious, but he never took the fight there. And that leads me to point number 2. And this is what I think was really Diego's downfall in the first fight. Outside lead foot positioning. Volkanovski always kept his lead foot outside of Diego's, and I'll spare you all the jargon, but that does a few things. It makes it harder for Diego to cut off Alexander Volkanovski. It makes it harder for him to land his power punches clean, and it makes it harder for him to see the shots coming. So I think for Diego Lopes, the key in this fight is going to be cutting off the cage. You can't chase Volkanovski. He has terrific footwork. You have to cut him off at angles, and if you can start making the octagon smaller, that's going to let him hit the nice 2-punch combos that he likes to lean in and counter with. It's going to let him execute some of the wrestling. He has to do more than just chase Volk, because if he chases Volk, he's going to lose again.
BC, you made the point that there's been evolution and growth, but it has only been 9 months since Lopes lost to Volk at 314. How have you seen growth over that span?
A lot of it is just when you hear Lopes talk. He's a true student of the game. As Shaq mentioned, he moonlights as a coach in that famed Lobo gym in Mexico. When you hear Lopes talk about what went wrong against Volkanovski, you realize right away that there's a winner underneath that bushy hair and the chest tats. When he looks back at that first fight, he is very honest. He says, look, I had never fought 5 rounds in the UFC before. I'd never fought for the title. The bright lights got the best of me. What that meant for Lopes was, unfortunately, he threw the game plan out the window and was really just following Volk around, chasing him, looking for that 1-punch knockout, which is really the worst possible way to fight a defensive, technical wizard like Volkanovski, who can use that footwork and make you miss and make you pay. You notice, though, if you're watching the UFC Countdown show, if you watch a lot of the pre-fight stuff, what Lopes did after that loss was go back to the gym and work on his wrestling in particular, evolve his game completely. And even though we praised that Noche UFC fight last September against Silva for being, an outside fight of the year contender, it was the fact that Lopes stuck to his game plan, stuck to the idea that he wanted to take Silva down early to wear him down. And once that fight became a crazy back and forth, Lopes knew the timing, knew the setup. He wanted to land that spinning shot. He knew there would be a gap and an opening in Silva's attack. That is a thinking man's action fighter, and that is the spirit he needs to bring. And if there's anything you can say that he can build on from that first fight, let's not forget, down the stretch of that fight, he dropped Volk in round 4. He hurt him again in round 5. He did put a lot of pressure on to make that fight competitive, when off the top it looked like Volkanovski was one step ahead of him and had his number. If you're going to get a more calculated, patient, but still dangerously and aggressive version of Lopes, you got a guy that's ready for the championship level and should be a live dog in this rematch.
Lopes, obviously our focus here as we get set for Saturday. I do want your thoughts on both sides of this outcome, gentlemen. Shaq, I'm going to come to you first here. A future UFC Hall of Famer, and as you detailed, one of the greatest ever in this weight class, and Alexander Volkanovski. That name needs no further decoration. What would checking the box mean to Volk, and what would it mean if we see the other outcome?
For Volkanovski, there's sort of there's the analyst perspective of what this means, and then there's what it means for him personally. For us, you can kind of throw around, is Volk the greatest featherweight? Is it Max? Is it Jose Aldo? I will tell you, if you're in the Volk camp, 3 wins over Holloway. He also beat Aldo, right? The other 2 guys can't say that. For him to now have an extended reign with his 2nd featherweight title, I think it really further separates him from his contemporaries in that featherweight GOAT conversation. Now, how much does beating Diego Lopes twice consecutively do? I'm not sure, but this does open the door for him to start fighting guys like Movsar Evloev and Lerone Murphy too. And if he can start cleaning out the division a second time, I don't think there's any debate about who the all-time best featherweight is. But for Volk personally, and this is what I really admire, he told me ahead of the first Diego fight, it's not about any of that. This is for him. He did not get to savor his first run as champion. He was just concerned with building that legacy and doing the job. And so he knows he's closer to the end of his career than the start. And what he really wants to get out of this is just enjoying and appreciating what he's accomplished.
We got a good one on our hands here, gentlemen. Brian Campbell, Shaq Mahjouri, only one way to find out. We will see them Saturday. We appreciate the insight as always. Coming up, it's UFC 325 from Sydney, Australia. Volkanovski versus Lopes 2. Last April, it was Volk taking down Lopes via unanimous decision to win that vacant featherweight championship at the time. Co-main event is a lightweight bout between Dan Hangman Hooker and Benoit Saint-Denis. Hooker lost his last fight in November to Arman Sarukian via submission. Saint-Denis has won 3 consecutive fights. We'll see you Saturday on Paramount+.